All right, hi. Welcome to our talk now, Meet the Makers. I'm Simon as well, and I will be at the same time hosting this talk and participating in it. I hope I will manage that. Let me introduce our guests. We have Nadia here, who is a journalist and who will bring on a little bit of the perspective out to how use smartphones in a journalistic sense. We have Trim here from London, who made just a Snapchat film, who is highly recognized on festivals so far. Sandeep is a cinematographer from Switzerland, and Salma, kind of a special guest, who came over from Egypt, who is also tonight here with a film called
Winner Takes Field.
Winner Takes the Field. All right, and I want to, we're kind of building up of what Jason talked before, and Mark talked before, about kind of the craft that goes into mobile storytelling, how we do it, like what are the challenges we are tackling while producing a film with a mobile phone. And I want to like to start with the question of the story. Let's say, like the case Jason made very strongly to us to not use a mobile phone as a kind of, well, it's the only thing I have, right? What else can I have? Let's start with the question, what story do you guys actually feel like should be told with a mobile phone? Like, if you have the options, you as a cinematographer, let's start with you. You could use whatever kind of tool sets you otherwise have or rent. Where do you go in with from a storytelling perspective that you say, well, this story can most probably be told with a mobile phone?
Well, I think you can, for example, you can use the look of a smartphone as advantage. So basically, everybody has already has taken a selfie and knows what it looks like, and you can use this to tell a story that you, for example, use the POV look, so that the viewer already knows that look and gets into the story. I think there is a Spanish director, Alfonso Garcia. He makes a lot of horror short movies where the actress or the actor has to hold the smartphone, and you always have the feeling that I know that look, and that's how he tells stories. And I think that's a good way to use smartphones.
Trim, you made something very specifically with your film. Trim's film, who will be shown this evening as well, is a Snapchat story, who kind of, as I started watching it, I wasn't sure, like, well, isn't this now like just gathered from a random Snapchat account, or is it like actually a storytelling? Because he uses the kind of how Snapchat works to tell the story from A to Z. Maybe you can talk about a little bit about this.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been incredible so far. I had a film come out last year called Crack Screen, and it's entirely Snapchat based. And the film kind of charts the life of this young woman before, during, and after she suffers quite a horrible attack. I don't want to spoil it, but to your question, I think making something on a phone, or specifically using like a social media platform, it kind of opens up this portal of intimacy, and an intimacy that is quite familiar, because as you said, like, audiences are very used to these sorts of aesthetics and these sorts of behaviorisms as well. So as a filmmaker, it's almost like a shortcut. Like, you can attain that level of intimacy a lot quicker because your audience already recognizes it. And but then that also presents an opportunity then to be quite subversive through taking quite ordinary aesthetics and sort of flipping them.
How is it for you, Nadia? Like, as a journalist, where do you get in and say, well, that's just easier, or this is just more appropriate, gathering that kind of footage with a mobile phone?
I think it's easier to work with people who are not used to be in front of a camera, and to act more natural, to not feel uncomfortable, so to forget about the camera and to just have a natural talk with me. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how was it for you as you started your film, which has kind of a cinematographic look and a lot of aspects in it? How did you decide that, well, I will do this on a smartphone?
Actually, this was like the first time to try shooting a film and completely see, okay, the iPhone is good enough. And I think this somehow gives the film this feeling of, is it fiction or is it documentary? And kind of with the whole situation. So for me, I feel like for this kind of film, it really works when you want to kind of eliminate this factor of oh, is this a fiction film or is that not? And then it gives you, like, it's more, you have some kind of, like, another personal level, like, access to what you're shooting somehow. And it's also, like, you don't have to plan shot for shot. You kind of show up where you want to be, and you also, like, really have this freedom of navigating the space, because it's really, what's most important is where you are and what you see where you are. Of course, then it's like a fiction film, but I think this kind of eliminated. It was kind of funny to kind of stand there and, like, direct people with, like, just a phone. So it was also like this whole, oh, okay, this is cool too. Like, doesn't matter the camera. But other than that, when I think of making films with phones, and I would think of all the ideas that are happening now, for me, it's like this kind of extended memory. And I feel like this can give you so much material and access to so many things that you can do when you're, like, also figuring out your own thoughts and while editing. I think this, like, it's like a whole space could open up for you. And yeah, and I think now I don't differentiate this whole line between if it's a phone or if it's not. Because then you can just begin to see, like, you can see content anywhere around you, and then it works for what you need, and it doesn't matter if it's a phone or not.
By the way, let's try to keep this as a discussion, so whoever wants to chip in, let's go for it. I myself, I was last year here with a film I shot on a GoPros, and my process started by water. I had a story I wanted to film in the sea, and it was like, in my naivety, I walked up to my cinematographer and said, hey, we're going to shoot in water, and he was like, yeah, no. And then we, like, tried to figure out, well, how can we shoot in water? Because, like, if you try to rent the case, I shot usually on DSLRs, it's just too expensive, right? And then he said, like, as a joke, well, I have a GoPro, but who wants that? Now, in my thought process, then because I never thought about, well, what is actually what Jason just talked about? What is actually the film language of this stuff, right? I didn't allow myself to go into the thought process of course, we see so many footages nowadays on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, short videos who are shot on a mobile device. This is kind of getting into our minds and our habits of how a film should look like, right? Like the way all the DSLR cameras try to copy the look of film with the grain, and, like, we try to stay in 24, 25 frames per second. By the way, if we go to film talkie, raise your hand. Don't want to, like, exclude someone because, like, we use film terms. Like, if we use terms who are too specific for the film stuff. Yeah. So, and then I thought, well, of course, the GoPro look in water, like on surfboards and stuff. And I discovered the same that you described, that it kind of gives you an intimacy, like it makes this immediacy, kind of a feeling that we are used to from footage from our phones, which kind of rocks and works for the story. And so we recrafted the story around this mobile GoPro approach who enabled us in storytelling tremendously. Now, the second step after we have our story, we go into pre-production. Does the workflow in your pre-production, when you decide to shoot on a mobile phone, change to some extent? I guess for you as a journalist, it just makes life way easier. No, yeah. It doesn't?
Less equipment. But
less equipment.
That's the only thing, I think.
But on the other hand, you have to do the same research and find your subject. How was it for you in the pre-production process?
It was actually, in the film I play in this football team, and it's every Saturday and Tuesday, and so at one point it was okay. There are two stories happening parallel in the film, so I would go in the field, play when I'm supposed to play, because I don't want the team to feel like, oh, it's like, what's going on now? You're shooting a film about us or something. And then someone could also hold because it's simple, you know, it's like someone else while being on the field can hold the camera who's waiting. So it's kind of, the pre-production was basically of just arranging with the people who are going to be part of this film, that they are just okay with being part of this film. And the rest was just actually flowing very organically as we're standing and shooting, because I don't need to prepare lights or angles or tripod or anything. It's just about, actually the most important part is how the acting is like. And this took the most attention, which I feel like is the best is a very good advantage that I like, because this gives you more time to repeat. No, okay, no, can repeat, but it's still, you're not changing, you're just working with the acting more. So this was in pre-production really did not take much except to arrange with the people who are part of the project.
How did you prepare, Trim? Because like in your film, the actress, as far as I can tell, is holding the phone all the time herself. How did this process go? Was she like already using Snapchat a lot, or was the initial response like, what the fuck, I don't hold the camera myself, what do you want?
I saved money on a cinematographer. I think so. The actress in my film, like I knew her through one of my close friends, so we already had that kind of rapport and that sort of kind of this intimacy that was very necessary for a project like this. But in terms of pre-production, I totally agree with what you were saying. Like, I think it depends on what you're trying to do with your film firstly. But for mine, for example, and I don't know if this is similar to yours, like what was really paramount was to attain this level of intimacy and naturalism, and how you were saying that you thought it was real, you know. So it's almost like we were open to mishaps and blemishes and cracks and warts, you know, for it to sort of feel like almost like a heightened amateur aesthetic. But I think with Pre for ours, it was more just about like the story and having the kind of scaffolding in place. But then when you had that kind of structure, then it was just about just going for it and seeing what happens, and that's really exciting. Feels really alive.
And for you as a cinematographer, when you challenge a shoot, knowing I will shoot on mobile phone, how does this change stuff for you?
Well, I think it depends. There are two types of filmmakers. One who are really focused into storytelling, and then the other ones who are maybe DOPs and just want to do visually great stuff as well. And for me, when I shoot with a smartphone, there's a lot of aspects I have to watch in the pre-production. For example, what kind of lenses do I want to use? Am I shooting in a low light situation? If yes, I need lights. Otherwise, there will be a lot of noise. And yeah, there are so many aspects which it really depends on which field you go. I mean, if you do an article, the message is really important. So you just have to be quick and have to capture all the information. And for me as a DOP, I want to have the most beautiful shot with the smartphone, so I can tell my viewers, hey, this was shot with a smartphone, but it doesn't look like one.
Yeah. And if we go into the next step of the production of our actual footage, I'd like to start with you. So how does like your daily business differ if you make this commitment to shoot your journalistic footage with a smartphone? Where does it change, makes life easier or harder?
I think it makes it way easier if it's something spontaneous happening. So no preparation, no, I'm gonna shoot tomorrow this and that story. But, an accident is happening right now there, and I have my mobile phone with me, and I can do my article or my video right now because I have my camera always with me. So that is way more easier. And the other thing is that my smartphone is not just my camera, it could be also my editing computer, and of course I can also upload and publish it on my phone, so I can be, if necessary, faster than in the old days.
You, from your background, Nadia, worked with the Swiss television, who is kind of the SRF, who is kind of the standard on journalistic work in Switzerland, more or less. How open was Swiss radio and television for this new technology, or how open is it today?
I mean, I quit the SRF 6 years from now, so before 6 years no one talked about mobile journalism in Swiss television, but now there are some guys who are really good in it and are producing regularly things with the phone, and it's seen in the news, or they even make a live stand-up to the news with the smartphone and a selfie stick. So, and most of the viewers don't see the difference.
I personally felt like in the production of my film with the GoPro stuff, there is something that I call geekism. So we are all excited in the film world when the new camera comes out, or when the sensor gets bigger, when the new lens is there, whatever. So, but at the end of the day, your audience never cares about it, right? This is not the language that you talk with your audience. Your audience want to have an awesome story. That's it. Wherever you produce it, on what kind of media you produced it, no one cares about it, right? And I felt this kind of liberating because this pulling the focus or the weight of your story about, yeah, I made it with a mobile phone. That's nice, it's cool, but on the other hand, no one really cares, right? It's not like your pitching point. Your pitching point is the story that you have to tell. However you captured the footage, no one cares. And I actually discovered, because this GoPro things have this super small screen in the background, I wasn't able as a director to kind of constantly look at the screen. So I had something similar as if I would have shot with 16mm, where you have your camera operator, a DP, looking through the viewfinder, and you as a director, you don't see it through the viewfinder, you're just watching the performances yourself. I kind of had a similar process, so I had to kind of, because I didn't want to make a little screen village, I mean, on the open sea anyway, not. I just had to trust, you know, I had to amp up the communication with the cinematographer that we know what we are doing. I know that he will like go to the composition the way we talked about, but I will not have to constantly check the frame on what's going on. Oh. How was it for you, the production? Because like, to achieve the look that you achieved in your Cracking Screen film, who, as you said, this heightened amateur look, I guess that's not easy to do at all. How was the production going?
I think I put a lot of trust into my actor, and equally she trusted me with like her vulnerability, I suppose. And most of the film is entirely scripted. It's just I sort of allowed her to film the scenes when she wanted at home. So it was very much like my actor was in her own sort of familiar conditions. She was at home, you know, like it was sort of, you know, I like to give my actors a lot of freedom, you know, and the film is only sort of 8 minutes long, but we amassed almost like an hour's worth of footage. So there was a lot to sort of play with, and you know, we'll come on to like post, I'm sure, with all of us, but you know, that was like a really sort of militaristic thing, you know, trying to sort of stitch together all of these different things into a you know, a digestible short. But yeah.
So kind of mobile filmmaking enabled you to be not even on set each time that she shot?
I mean, there were certain scenes, like really pivotal ones, where I was there. So, for example, not to give it away, but you know, the attack and sort of the bits afterwards that sort of involved like prosthetics and stuff. But for the most part, I was very much just go for it. So it was almost like we were kind of, you know, it was like a sort of a remote form of direction where I would be sort of assessing her performance through like, you know, WhatsApp and sort of things like that, like. But you know, I think because I was working with an actor who hadn't really acted before, like a first-time performer, I think, you know, it's a really liberating experience. You know, as you guys were saying, like, you know, when you go in with like a small film with like a small camera, like it's almost like a demystified mode of filmmaking. There's not like this whole committee or sort of, you know, video village or anything like that. It's just, you know. It's not as threatening, you know, especially because everyone is so used to, like you said, like taking selfies and things like that. You know, it's they can really throw themselves into the material because the thing watching them is so sort of small and familiar, and you know.
And for you, Summit, you gave it away before a little bit, so you were sometimes in the field yourself while someone else was shooting, right?
Yeah, I mean, I also did it with my twin sister. So she's not here today, so I wish like that she would be, but she's not. So we were like together doing it. So sometimes we would like switch because this also happens. And the trainer, he was like somehow also sometimes feeling like, okay, what are you doing? So it was like, because I think like when you're with the camera, with the phone, like, I mean, no one expects it to be big. I think this is the feeling I got then. But I think it's maybe something, it's fine. It's just because it's a new experience. But it was like, I think the people are, for me, the idea about working with the mobile camera is in a lot of ways liberating. I think especially also when I'm thinking of Egypt, because the camera is really a threat, you know, and so the mobile is like, you can simply say, I'm shooting something personal. You know? Of course, you can get into the ethical question of, oh no, what's that? No, but I'm talking about the politics behind what a camera stands for. But with this film, it was really I think because there's a lot of movement in the film as well, so it gives you this kind of access into just the situation, and you're following it with the camera, with the phone, and also recording sound on the phone. It's really, so suddenly it just becomes a complete thing, but just with your phone. And I never really put terms on it, like you said, that I'm a mobile filmmaker or all of this. For me, I feel like just the story is the essence that brings the rest with it. I don't know what's the question now, but I'm just speaking.
We talked about like how it was to produce. So you actually made your production in kind of the daily life of the training of this football team.
Yes, but there was a scripted scenario because the idea was to do something about the discrimination against women somehow, and so there was some parts where it's actually, yes, it is like this is the football training. But the rest, the layer of sound added another layer to it that is completely it's a script. It's not what happened, and the rest of it was kind of showing up on this on the football field, which was the set, and kind of spending more time with the people who are going to act, who aren't actors, to tell them what you want to do. How they should, what kind of emotion they should, and then I think actually as well, I think the nice thing is when they are in their own comfortable environment, there are little kids in the film, so it's also, you get to see that immediately someone could give you a reaction that really works with what you want, because somehow I think as little kids you get to see how much they absorb from the environment, so they already have this within them somehow. It's not like I tell them, okay, say these words exactly, but it's just working with the kind of things that you know that they've already been probably subjected to or absorbing from the environment or from the society. So it was more, like you said, the experience of shooting like this was more free. You have more time at the moment to arrange your thoughts again and work with the situation. And there's also something in the middle that happened, you were saying about if there's an accident, there was also a fight that happened randomly, so this was also part of it. So I think this kind of working for me as a filmmaker, I think I get inspired a lot from reality, so I think it's really important for me as a filmmaker to, okay, I'm doing fiction, but I'm really working also with reality, I think the phone is it's a very convenient tool for that, you know.
I guess it blends into what Jason said before. It's a massive red tape cutter. You made several films on mobile phones. How what kind of best practices did you over the process now find out? What makes your life easier by now? What are mistakes you don't do a second time anymore? How did it come for you?
Well, mostly it's just experience. You take the phone you're used to, you know the advantages of that phone, and if you look at the market, the phones it's not getting worse, it's getting better. So like Jason said, Red is going to bring out the camera which can shoot RAW. Samsung brought out the camera which can shoot low light and with 900 frames, so it's always improving, and that helps us in the production. So I think if you start now and are trying to produce short films with a smartphone, you recognize what are your strengths with your device, and after that you know how to shoot, what to do better. I had a lot of issues with heat, So when I shot a short film with smartphone, it's always got very quickly hot, and the charges were the charge got lower and lower, and for that we built like a ice bucket for the smartphone, and yeah, after that, yeah, it cooled down. So it's just experience.
That's awesome. So what, you created a little rig to put something cooling around it? Or?
Yeah, we had like we had two things. One was like a plastic bag with ice cubes, but like the whiskey cubes, the huge round one, they stay longer as ice. And after that, we also had like a pad, which was cool. So if the smartphone was too hot, we just took our extra smartphone to continue filming and put the other one to the cooler. Yeah,
that's a valuable trick.
Yeah.
So before we open this to a Q&A, if you might have questions, I want to throw in the last topic into our discussion. I feel like the change, let's call it the filmmaker movement, to where's Chase? Over there. So I feel like making film has always been the privileged art, because whatever happened from from the changes, like as they brought out the 8mm film, right, and said now it's for everybody. No, it wasn't. It's still expensive as shit to get this stuff developed, right? As the DSLR came, or the awesome digital cameras, it's so much money to buy it, to rent it, to process it, whatever. With mobile filmmaking, I feel like we take away this enormous privilege there. It is only allowed for a certain type of people to go into this realm with so much money and collaborators involved to be able to tell a story, right? By now, with mobile filmmaking, more or less everybody has a smartphone in every part of the world, and you are just a storyteller. You are not hindered. You're not excluded by something like, oh, well, what's your production budget? What's your camera you're using? What are your thoughts on that? Like, I personally feel like I've seen movies made by mobiles, which I think otherwise I wouldn't have seen them.
I think everyone has access to paper and a pen, and not everyone is a writer. So I think just because everyone has a smartphone, not everyone is a filmmaker. So yeah, it's
definitely,
so,
but I think it enables other people to work with mobile
sure.
phones, which otherwise wouldn't have been able to go there, right?
And I think that is great, because filmmaking should not be, or if you want to make a film, it should not be a problem because of money. So with the smartphone, you can do it with no money. And so if you have stories you want to tell, you can, and I think that's great.
Filmmaking with the smartphone is it's actually just a new device which gives you the possibility to tell stories, but it doesn't make you a better filmmaker. It's just people who don't have access to film gears or don't have a lot of money are now capable of telling stories, and if they are good storytellers, they can produce good movies. And I think that's a big advantage with the smartphones nowadays. Personally, I was at the beginning a bit afraid that if I produce smartphone short films, that clients will be like, oh, he produces only with smartphones, so that's only low budget. But like Jason said, I haven't lost a client yet. So.
And how was it for you? You said before about a little bit the politics of a camera in Egypt. How is it for you to this mobile phone enables you to do stuff you couldn't do otherwise?
Honestly speaking, like the last situations I think of when I was also filming with the phone, I would get like also a policeman talk to me. Yeah. So I feel like now maybe it just makes it a little bit like the discussion, that you could actually go through a discussion and be like, or actually like I discovered that even though after I delete the video, I could still retrieve it. So I think this is an option we need in life somehow now. But this also was told to me by the policeman who told me I have to delete it. And then he was like, there was like a main conversation and then like a side conversation happening where he told me that I could get it back. So I was like, okay, okay, good. I didn't know. And I was like, I didn't know this. And he was like, you didn't know this? Okay. So I'm happy like this. I think there are more possibilities existing now with the phone. So maybe you film and maybe you I don't know if we have like a quick method to upload, so that like you can get your content that you want. So I think for me the part of like if I'm standing in front of something that's really like asking, like it's calling for me to film it somehow, and the only thing I have is my phone, I will definitely film with it. And I also think that anyone in this position and feeling should also do that, because like that's the most important thing. Is it's not that, I mean, also maybe this becomes part of the language you want to tell something with. And I feel like now everyone is like filming with their phones all the time, or at least I am. So I feel like this is like I feel like it's like kind of extension of the memory, which is also somehow parts of it are scary, but parts of it are like very exciting, because you can really shape everything in any way you want, depending on the vision you want, like your vision of what you want to do with it. So it's less more about what kind of camera I have. It's just, okay, what am I filming? And so I agree with you when you say like it's just another device, but it makes you more free in how you deal with the things around you and what you can film and what you can't, and it doesn't stop you there like, oh, I don't have a camera so I can't film. No, it's not real so much. It's
I mean, it's about the stories we tell and not the device we capture it on. Like the tricks you told us about how you cool down your mobile phone. If we would have shot this on a Red or on a Arri Alexa, we would have the same stuff that we have to think about how to handle the equipment and so on. But now let's open it if someone has a question, like to the round here. And Andrea runs around with a microphone.
Concerning that you can actually film everything with the smartphone and no one is noticing it like a camera, what do you think about privacy rights? Because if you have a big camera, you either have to make it clear that you're filming someone, or get the rights, or you just don't film this person. But I feel like with smartphones, this is getting a gray area. And I wonder what you think about this.
Well, I personally would never publish a film I shot on a mobile device without the consent of any kind of people in it. I mean, there's like, I don't know, and it's for every country it's different, but there are like the rules, like how small a head has to be considered not noticeable and therefore free to use. But like if I would take a shot of this room and I would kind of see your faces everywhere, I personally would never publish it without having you sign the release form, because, or like at least my production company would kind of try to kill me if I would try that, because they are the ones who have to deal with the aftermath. How is it for you guys?
Yeah, I think for me it's also the same. I think always when you're filming something, you also have this sensibility whether you are breaching something or not. So I think this is something, or at least for me, it exists. So I would also anyway have this in mind when I know I'm filming anything. And also I think it's a different, yes, it's like a kind of a memory storage thing, but I think when it comes to actually publishing something or releasing it, it's a different story. But this line, yes, I think it can easily, with all this technology, get like really tricky. But this is something this is yes something to think of. And I think especially with the glasses thing, and like I know a girl, she filmed an entire film with the glasses with her father, and he didn't know. But in the end, when she had to screen it, he agreed. Okay, that will be screened. But I think there's only, I think this is like, okay, yes, it's a very this is the age we're living in.
But I think it's not a problem for filmmakers or journalists, because we know what the rules are and what we can and what not. But everyone has a smartphone, so the ones who don't know the things, or the influencers, the kids who are making videos, they don't know what they should not do. I think there's the problem. So I think that's a big issue for the education, how we as a society work with that.
I would say, nevertheless, the question is very valid because this is this narrative going on among filmmakers. We do everything to get the amazing shot. You know, we make the kid cry, we kill the animal, whatever. As long as the footage is awesome, fuck it, we do it, right? I think this shit is over. This is never the side I want to stand on because we are just making films, right? And I would kind of violate any kind of boundary, may it be privacy or any other kind of boundary, to violate in order to get the awesome shot. Not for me.
Yeah, well, the privacy setting is always the same. It doesn't matter what device you use, if it's a smartphone, a drone, or whatever. But I think if you use the smartphone, people are more willingly to say yes, it's alright, because they don't care. They think because it's a smartphone, it's something little, and they don't have to watch out for anything.
It's like what we talked about now quite often, how intimidating it can be if you have the huge rig, the huge telephoto lens popping in your face and the boom over your head and stuff. It's kind of easier. So we had another question up front.
Hi, mine actually isn't a question, it's more a conversation, but about the thing about everyone has a paper and a pen, but not everyone's a writer and not everyone's a filmmaker. My mum is a photographer, and she told me from a very young age, unless you study photography, you're not a photographer. And whenever I see all the pictures on Instagram, I'm always I think of like DOPs, and I'm sorry for them. I'm thinking, oh, there's all these filters and you can just make it look pretty. But then, and also with the conversation that you had about the privacy settings, I think like another thing is everyone has the iPhone, but not everyone's educated. And I think unless you go to journalism school, you're not going to be a journalist. And in the same way, so maybe we should talk about also like education and how, like, because it's cheaper, we can educate more people by just turning up and teaching them how to film or how to take photos. So maybe it's going to make more people access the education part of photography and filmmaking.
I think there is already a good way of education for free through the internet, through YouTube. I mean, tutorials are the best seen thing on YouTube. So yeah, that's really a great way to educate. And I don't think you don't have to visit a journalism school or a filmmaker school. You can, but it's just one way. You can learn it other ways as well.
I agree very much with your statement. I feel like when you are in a school who kind of has a fancy film education, you know, when they have the fancy camera and whatever, that's a very nice college you're going to, a very nice school you're going to. The craftsmanship, the craftsmanship in making a film is there, whatever kind of capturing device that you're using. But having the mobile film enables just way more voices, way more diverse voices, way more people can actually try out. I mean, Jason said he makes his courses about Filmbreaker for free at the moment, you know. To get access to the knowledge of it, there is YouTube. To get access to the device, you have it in your pocket. And I think this makes a major shift. But education behind it, if you want to be like a storyteller and you make your mistakes, you try, even if you go to a school or if you just do it on your own, you learn with every project. But the craft behind storytelling will always be the same. The device doesn't change it. The device, for me, kind of crashes down on the privilege for the people who have been allowed to do it before.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add, and where it concerns like mobile-based filmmaking, I guess like a lot of film schools and stuff, a lot of it is rooted in what's quite traditional, and obviously what we're exploring here is it's really carving out new ways of telling stories. It's new ground. It's hugely nascent, embryonic. I think, as Jason was saying, I thought his talk was really, really interesting, but in particular, where you were trying to name or give like a name and meaning to this new movement, to sort of create this filmic grammar and sort of vernacular that doesn't even exist yet. So I think as we kind of all congregate together and start sort of familiarizing ourselves more and more with these modes of sort of filmmaking and stuff, like hopefully sort of where sort of education and the academy is involved, hopefully that will follow.
One last question.
Hi there. So my concern is with everyone having access to a mobile phone is that there is so much content. And it's getting so confusing. You watch so many things, you waste a lot of time starting to watch things. And I think storytelling loses a little bit. You know, we're losing story as it nice. Story is beautiful, but if story means that you turn your mobile phone on selfie mode and you talk, aka vlogging, is not storytelling for me. And you can be a brilliant talker, and it looks nice, you know, like PewDiePie is entertaining. But storytelling and filmmaking, to me, I find a bit of a different thing, you know. So, do you agree with that, or is this? Can we separate the two? Like you can. Journalism, I agree. You go and you capture something, and it's the moment, and you do it. But filmmaking, I think, I don't know, storytelling, you know, it's many people, angles, and otherwise it's...
I super much disagree with that. Because it's like, you remember, it was like, we had through the past month a lot of discussions about female directors, right? And there's this tendency when a film comes out from a female director that it is like, oh yeah, that's not so good because it's a female director, right? If we look at all the films directed by men, and all the crap that is produced, yeah, of course, it's a lot of crap, and some films are beautiful or amazing. The same goes for any kind of whatever gender, whatever background is in a director. I don't know if this is kind of a valid question in a sense of, well, because crap is produced or boring stuff is produced, it kind of puts down the overall quality, right? Because so many filmmakers make so much crap until they make something beautiful. There are very few filmmakers who like start at the top and like have a consistency and produce awesome after awesome after awesome film. By having this amount of footage, I mean, if you remember the days where you were sitting in front of the TV and zapping through the channels and it's crap, it's crap, it's crap, it's crap. Oh, I could look now, it's crap. You know, I think it's the same. The distribution platforms are kind of constantly bombarding with video footage on all of them, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. But I think if someone has something to tell and is good at it, they will find their way and they will sooner or later be heard. And we heard from Mark, like, how he is not just relying on his talent as an actor, but kind of enables himself also in a way of getting himself out there. And I think this is something new and for me exciting. And I think storytelling is good or bad, whatever kind of masses are doing it. How do you guys think about that?
I think more he's referring to the fact that everyone can just put their content, which is also personal, out there and feel like it's like they're forming their story somehow. And for him, this somehow feels like, no, this is not what I am expecting from, I don't know, an audiovisual story. No, that he wants to feel something through it, but maybe he doesn't. But I think this is related more to the fact that also we're always connected to, and we're always checking our phones and always seeing all these things that maybe some of them is interesting, some is like absolutely not. But I think this does not change the conversation about, maybe we can think about, what does this all content mean? Like how can, like, this whole collective memory that's like really expanding so much because you can really record so easily. Maybe this for me is like more of a discussion of, okay, how might this affect filmmaking somehow? But not that it affects the general overall standard of storytelling, because I think this goes way beyond or further than what I can even imagine with the history of storytelling. So I don't know.
And another aspect I see a lot is it's more for professional. It's now a challenge. I mean, there are a lot of filmmakers who already have a Red, for example, or a Nari, and are just producing. If we talk about storytelling, they're producing shit because they just use the advantage of the look since they have a big camera. And now, since everybody else has now a camera, they have to now uprise everything, not only the look, but also the storytelling. Otherwise, the young people will take their jobs away. Yeah.
One last.
No?
Yeah.
All right, sorry if I misunderstood your question.
I was referring more to the experience of going to the cinema. It used to be a thing. You used to respect it more because you go, and now there's so much everywhere. You know, in the sense where you go to the supermarket and you have 50 different salad dressings. And it's like, and if you have two, you know, you go and you get this one, and then there's so much.
Like, kind of visually saturated. That's very true, and it's kind of finding a way to be heard in this mass, right? Yeah. All right, thank you so much for participating. We are all here for the rest of the night. Happy to talk with you.
Thanks so much, guys. It was really interesting to hear.